Hi friends, welcome back to Faith and Arrow Homestead. My name is Jaylee and I have something that I've been really wanting to show you today. I've been talking a lot about cutting out seed oils and creating a diet that's more nourishing and healthy for you and your family. And so today I have a meal prep hack that I have been implementing for several months now, and it has been a game changer. So simple, very little hands-on time, affordable, and I definitely just want to show you guys. So that is every Sunday I make a fresh batch of chicken broth, and I do that by boiling a whole chicken in water with some things that I'll show you. I boil the chicken for about 2 hours. I take it out, I get all of the meat off of the chicken carcass, and then I throw the bones back into the pot with a splash of apple cider vinegar, and I let that simmer for as long as I can, usually until I go to bed. Right now it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and I will probably let this simmer till about 9 o'clock tonight. So what is that, 13-ish hours? Sometimes I get all the way up to 14 hours, depending on when I get started. I'm getting started a little late today. And then I will save the chicken broth, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but that's basically what we're doing here today. So on my cutting board, I have 2 onions and a carrot, roughly chopped. I just quarter the onion, and I just had 1 ginormous carrot that I just cut into sections. I used to cut things up way smaller, and I was finding that they would disintegrate into the broth by the end, because remember, you're simmering this for many hours. And the carrots especially, I like to filter those out and give them to Benny. He really, really likes them. So I found by keeping the chunks bigger, it's easier for me to find them and get them out of the broth at the end. Some people do celery. I never have celery on hand. I don't really love celery, and so I never ever add it to my broth, and I still end up with a really delicious final product, but please feel free to add it if you want to. Here I have an organic whole chicken. Now here's the thing. I'm glad that it's organic. I definitely plan on getting my chickens from either a local farmer or maybe hopefully here soon raising my own, because although yes, it's organic, I still don't know how this chicken was raised. I don't know its living conditions, I don't know its treatment, I don't know anything about it, and that makes me a little nervous, but good, better, best, we just have to do the best we can, right? When we're trying to source better food ingredients. So this is the whole chicken. It does say here, humanely raised. And then it has a little asterisk and it says, raised according to our animal welfare philosophy on select farms. And then it has a link for more information. So I don't know. But anyway, I have posted about this on my Instagram before, and I had several people reach out and say, that's way too expensive. Whole chickens are going for a lot of money where we are. I had some people in California telling me that they could purchase whole chickens for like $30. That's wild. This chicken weighed 4 pounds 9 ounces, and it was $13.87, and this is an organic chicken. You don't have to, if you're still wanting to follow this tip but you don't have affordable access to organic whole chickens, still just buy a regular whole chicken. That might not be the best that you could do, but it's still better than nothing. And this tip is very practical for a lot of reasons, and I'll talk about that as we continue on. So I still recommend doing it even if you can't find, like, this isn't the best I could do. I could go find a pasture raised organic chicken from a local farmer. I just don't have affordable access to that right now, so this is what I'm doing. So don't let that stop you. I just include it in the information I give you. But still, if all you can get is a whole chicken from Walmart, still do it. I still think it's got value regardless. Going back to the price, although some of you may have to spend quite a bit to do this, I still think it's worth it. And that's where I want to start talking about the value in adding these things into your regular diet, even if it costs a little bit more. And trust me, I am well aware. I still am not monetized. I'm not bringing any money in from this. I still work part-time at the hospital. I'm not made of money. I have a very, very tight budget every 2 weeks when I get paid. And sometimes I have very, very little money for groceries, and I still always get a chicken. It is a must for me. I don't care if I have to take in bottles and cans to get the money. I'm buying a chicken because it creates so much from scratch opportunity in my kitchen that is worth it for me. And so I don't know your personal situation. I don't know what your money looks like, but if you can swap something else out of your grocery budget to make room for the chicken, do it, because it creates, I'll show you as we go on. It's wonderful, and I highly, highly recommend it. So over here on my stove, I have a big stock pot, and that's the only thing that you need equipment-wise to do this. This is a Paula Deen stock pot. I got it from a garage sale for $5. So if you don't have a stock pot, you don't have to spend mucho money. Go to Goodwill, go to Salvation Army, see if you can't find one cheap. Doesn't have to be perfect. Stainless steel is fine. This one happens to be enameled. That's fine too. And I'll show it to you really quick. This is my stock pot. It's big. I don't know how big. It doesn't say. I don't know how many quarts this is or whatever. I have it filled up a little less than halfway. Yeah, a little less than, maybe like a fourth of the way filled with water, because that level will rise as you add everything into it. You're just trying to cover your contents, your chicken and your vegetables. That's all you're really trying to do. And as we're talking, I have that on high, and I'm trying to bring that water to a boil, because when you put your chicken in there, it's gonna bring the temperature way down. Especially for me today, because for the first time, I've never done this before, this is a frozen chicken. I bought this before we went on vacation, and then I haven't made broth since then. So this I bought previously, and so it's been in the freezer. I put it in the fridge last night and then got it out this morning. It's still super frozen. And so I'm probably going to have to simmer it for longer than 2 hours to cook it, and that's fine. I digress. So I've got my onion, my carrot, my chicken. The other ingredient that we're gonna end up adding to this are bay leaves. I usually add 3 bay leaves and just let everything simmer, and it's so good. So we are gonna go ahead and open up our chicken. I don't know, where you're gonna end up sourcing yours. I get mine from Wegmans, and it tells you on the packaging that it may or may not have the inside bits. Right here it says may not contain giblets, and I've had it happen both ways. I've had it contain the giblets and not contain the giblets. I have not yet learned how to cook the giblets, like what to do with them, and unfortunately I oftentimes just throw them away. So let's see, maybe today will be a learning opportunity. Let's see if today's chicken has the giblets. I don't know if I'll be able to because it's so frozen. Come on. Yep, it has the giblets today. So we are going to learn together. But anyway, regardless, wherever you get your chicken, check the cavity to make sure that there's not, excuse you, no thanks. Can you go? Make sure you check the cavity to make sure that there's not any plastic in there, because they wrap their giblets in a little bag. This is way too frozen for me to get this out. Okay, I just tried. I cannot get that bag of giblets out. Luckily for me, they don't put it in plastic. They put it in like this weird, like papery material. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in my stock pot, leave it in there for like 30 minutes, I think, and then I'm gonna carefully take it out, set it on a cutting board, let it cool, and then I'm gonna try to get it out. I don't wanna cook it all the way with it in there. I don't know if that, I'm afraid that the paper is gonna like disintegrate in there, and then I'm not gonna be able to get it out of my broth. So I think that's what I'm gonna do, and hopefully that works. Anyway, I digress. Don't worry about that. Just make sure that you don't have it in yours. But I'm gonna go ahead and get the chicken, the carrots, and the onion in my stock pot. And like I said, I usually let that go 2 hours. And for a thawed chicken, that's plenty. I think I might have to go, I likely will go longer with this one. So I'll come back to you when it's time to take the chicken off the bone. One more thing, I leave the lid on almost the entire time. So especially, let's just talk about the 2 hours where you're cooking your chicken. Let's talk about that first. So I leave the lid on the whole time. I have it on high, it comes up to a boil, and then I have a gas range, so I have to kind of play with the heat and get it to that sweet spot where it just has it at a gentle simmer, not boiling, and it's warm enough that it's doing something. I want it simmering. The reason being, the longer you have the lid off your stock pot, the more liquid you're going to cook off. Now, that can be good and bad. So for me, I prefer to have more broth, and in doing so, I sacrifice flavor. If I were to leave the lid off more, it would cook off some of that liquid and give me a more concentrated flavor, but I would have less product. I use this broth, as we'll talk about later, for a lot of different things, and I would rather have more with maybe a little less flavor than less with more concentrated flavor, if that makes sense. And what that comes down to is the lid. If you have the lid on, you're gonna trap that liquid inside. If you have the lid off, you're allowing that liquid to evaporate off. Just like when you're cooking down a sauce, for example, you want the lid off for that, so the liquid has somewhere to go. And remember that we're cooking this for hours and hours today. During the first 2 hours, I definitely leave the lid on. I don't take it off at all. The only time I take the lid off is when I remove the chicken. And then at the end, like we'll talk about, I remove the lid for the last couple of hours, but for the most part, it's on the whole time. And this is personal preference. What do you want your broth for? What are you gonna use it for? And I'm gonna give you some ideas at the end. But once you've done this a couple times and you start to get a rhythm and a routine and you figure out what you're gonna use yours for, you need to make that choice. Do you want less and a more concentrated flavor, or do you want more with a little less flavor? Your call. And I'll tell you what, with me trying to keep as much of the liquid as possible, I still find it very flavorful. It's still delicious. But granted, I've never done the concentrated kind, so I can't compare it, but I still think it's full of flavor. So anyway, I just wanted to quick give you that little caveat there and explain to you lid versus no lid so that you can make a choice practical for yourself and your family. Okay, you guys, so that did take a little over 2 hours. I want to say 2.5 hours for me, but my chicken was frozen, so I always usually just do 2 hours. So you can do this on your stove. I brought it over to the counter because I've got a lot of stuff on my stove right now. So I have a pot holder, and I've got my pot sitting right here on my cutting board. I already took my tongs and very carefully removed my chicken onto a cutting board. This is how you know it's done. It literally just falls apart as you are using the tongs to get it out of your stock pot. And so here I've got a container. This has been sitting here for a little while, and I'm just gonna go through, and if you're in a hurry and you can't let it cool, I have separated out the meat when it's very hot before, and it can be done, but you really do just have to be very careful because you can like seriously get burned. This is hot. I don't keep the skin. I throw the skin back into the pot. Your choice. If there's something you want to use it for, you can. I only keep the meat that I really definitely want to eat. So like whatever, this like cartilage and like there's some meat on here, but like it's pretty gross. I just throw it right back into the pot. Benny loves this. It's his favorite day of the week. You can't see him, but he sits right next to me, and I just feed him little bits of chicken. And I know that like you're not supposed to do that, and we're pretty good about not giving Benny a human food, but I like the bonding. And so he loves sitting next to me and me feeding him little bits of chicken, so I'm happy to do it. Sometimes there's a little bit of connective tissue on the end of a piece of meat. I just break it off, put the connective tissue in the pot, and then keep the chicken. Here's a good example of one of the bones that you'll find, and I just throw it right into the pot. This is kind of gross here, and so there is meat on this. I don't even know. I can't even tell you guys what parts of the chicken this is. I just kind of break off the meat that's on it, and then whatever this is just goes right into the pot. Same with this. This is a little piece of meat here that it's good enough to not go in the pot, but not quite enough that I'd want it. So this is a good example of something that I'll feed Benny. So if you have a dog, might be something you want to do. Just make sure that there aren't any bones. And I go through the whole chicken that way. It does take me a little bit, probably. I've gotten kind of fast at it now, so it probably takes me about 15 minutes to go through the whole thing. I pretty much put hands on every part of it and get out the little bits of chicken that I want. Feed some to Benny. The rest goes into the pot. And you can put pretty much whatever you want into the pot. Whatever parts of the chicken you want can go in there. Otherwise, because we just filter it at the end, or strain's the better word. I just put it through my strainer, and all those little bits that are gross get strained off, and you've got a beautiful broth. So it doesn't really matter. You can put whatever you want into the pot.
So there's really, this is a pretty easy process, pretty low pressure process. Can't really screw it up. I'm the only thing that I'm really careful to do is to make sure that I don't get any bones in my meat, because the recipes that I'm going to tell you about this evening, I just throw this chicken in there. I don't look at it very carefully. So this is the time. Now is the time to be very careful about what chicken you're keeping to eat and what chicken you're putting into the broth. So this is the main torso of the chicken and the skin. It usually does not stay on the chicken as well as it did with this one. I wonder if it's because it was frozen, but I just peel that right off, and most of the time, honestly, it's already off. And so now we've got the 2 breasts, and that's really, really, really good chicken. And so I just break it apart, and now I don't know how well you can see it where I have the camera, but now you've got the whole inner part of the chicken. You've got all these little bits of, oops, oh no, not for you, Ben. Oh, that's a shame. You got all these little bits of cartilage in here. Unfortunately, I'm not putting that in the pot, but that was a good piece. And you want all of that in there because all of that is going to release really delicious vitamins and nutrients into your broth, and you want all of that. Be really careful here because it's very, very hot. You can see, and this has even been sitting here for a little while, so if you're in a hurry and you jump right into it, it's going to be very hot. So please be careful. Do not burn yourself. I go through, and this meat's the easiest it comes off in large pieces. It takes the least amount of time. And so I just go through and throw it all in my container that I've set aside. And then once you get all of those big pieces off, that's when it gets real kind of gross, I guess. I don't know. You get all the like bones and inner pieces. If you've never handled a whole chicken before, probably going to gross you out a little bit the first time you do it. But guys, if you're interested in homesteading and you're interested in cooking from scratch and including like really delicious, nutritious whole ingredients in your cooking, you just got to push through. You just got to get past it. This is probably my 9th or 10th time doing this. I've been doing it for some time now, and it doesn't faze me at all anymore. Every now and then I'll get something where I'm just like, okay, that was a throat. That's gross. But like, it's really not, it's fine. So just push through. It's worth it to get this nutrition in your kitchen. I mean, it's excellent. And now pretty much all the inner stuff here is real, like, you wouldn't want to eat it. I don't even give it to Benny because there's so many little bones and stuff in here. And so into the pot it goes. Next, I put a splash of apple cider vinegar in there. That helps to draw out the nutrients and the minerals and the vitamins from inside the bones, the bone marrow and whatnot. That's all full of yummy goodness, and you want that to get released into your broth so that you can consume it. And so now we're going to move this back over to the stove. We're going to let that come back up to a simmer, and what I have left is my chicken. Usually, and this is just preference, a tip I guess, I usually break it up the rest of the way now, because once you put it in the fridge, it gets a little harder to, it doesn't break up quite as well once it gets cold. So while it's warm, I like to go ahead and shred it the rest of the way. It shreds up so easy, it just falls apart, and it gives you one last chance to get your hands on it and make sure that there are no bones, no little pieces of cartilage or anything like that in here. And you know, obviously I don't know the size of your family, but for Tom and I, this is usually 3 meals worth of chicken. If you've got a large family, 1 or maybe 2 meals worth. But what is so great about this, and one of the reasons I wanted to show you this, you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone here. Not only are you creating broth, which there are so many things you can do with, and we'll talk about that at the end of the video when the broth is finished, but now you've got a meat cooked and ready to put into a meal. And that makes meal planning so much easier. And I'm guaranteed now every single week, because I do this every Sunday, I'm guaranteed to have enough chicken for 2, sometimes 3 meals, and that makes it so much easier to meal plan when you know that you're going to have a protein. And so it's just, I don't know, it's really convenient, really healthy, really easy, and I really enjoy it. We could throw this over a Caesar salad, we could throw this into a wrap, I oftentimes, when I have a little bit of this left in the fridge that I haven't used, I'll put it on top of a homemade pizza. There's all sorts of things. You can make barbecue chicken sandwiches with it. All sorts of things that you can do with this chicken. Put it into a chicken and rice casserole. You could do stuffed peppers, chicken, rice, stuffed peppers with it. You could use it to make tacos or burritos, taquitos. I mean, go to Pinterest and type in chicken recipes or recipes using shredded chicken, and the ideas are endless, honestly. So there's my shredded chicken. It's nice and cool now. As you can see, I was handling it easily, and I'm going to put it into the fridge. So I'll come back with you guys when the broth is done, and I'll show you what I do with that.
All right, you guys, it is late and it is time to finish this up. Tom's already in bed, and this is the very last thing I have to do until I get to go to bed. But this is the way that this often goes because I want this to simmer for as long as possible to get as much nutrients as I possibly can out of it. I turned this off about an hour ago, and I've been letting it cool on the stove, and it is definitely still warm, but it's a lot more manageable than being, you know, hot right off of a simmering stove. So all we have to do now is strain it. I can't find my good strainer. I have a better one than this. You just want to try and get as fine of a strainer as you can to strain out all of the little bits of stuff, but honestly, this is good enough. And it'll still strain out everything that we need it to strain out. This part is usually a little messy. I almost always make at least a little bit of a mess. It's really not that big of a deal, but try, you know, to minimize the mess. And just pour it into the strainer that is over a container. Yeah, there's definitely little bits of stuff in here, but I don't really care that much. I'm not very picky as long as it strains out like all the bones and stuff, and it is. Benny's right here. He's excited. He knows what's going on. So I just set the lid on that kind of cockeyed just to let that cool before I put the lid on it all the way. So I almost always have a little extra left over in here. I could sit here and strain off every last drop of this. And if you're somebody who has a big family, perhaps that's something you might want to do. I'm not that picky, and usually by the time I do this, I'm super ready for bed. So I strain out what I can easily get out, and then I give the rest to Benny. However, I have to be very careful about that because I don't want him getting any of the pieces of onion, and I don't want him getting any of the bones either. So I've got two beautiful containers here of broth. I'm going to get Benny's dish. And I kept those pieces of carrot really big, like I said, and I'm just going to throw those in here. He loves the pieces of carrot. I think they're literally his favorite part. And they've been soaking in this broth all day. A little bit of onion is not going to hurt a dog Benny's size, so if there's an onion or two stuck to the carrot, I really don't try that hard to get all of it. And then the other thing I give him, if I have any obvious pieces of like big skin like this, I put that in there. He can have the skin. Some people are probably way less. Some people would probably just put the pot, like dump the pot out and let their animals just go at it. And so I'm even being a little pickier than I probably need to be with what I'm giving him. But he's an indoor doggy, and I'd rather him not have an upset stomach in the house. So I'm a little bit picky about what I give him. And if I find any pieces of meat that I missed when I was going through it the first time, those are usually pretty obvious by the end because all of this will have cooked way down. Like some of this just like disintegrates. So it's easier to find those pieces of meat that I missed the first time. And I just kind of bend them to make sure I'm not feeling any bones. And I put it all in his dish and he waits very patiently. Like a very good boy. Are you excited for your chicken and carrots? And then I just do one last good strain to try and get some of this broth in there for him. Very good. I really like having a dog that I can do this last little step here for, because it really makes me feel like I'm not wasting hardly anything. There is a bit of broken down junk in here, like the bones, and I can see little bits of bay leaf, and obviously the onions are in there, and I do toss that. I put it right in the trash. There's nowhere else for me in my little 4th acre suburban homestead that I put that. I could put it in the compost pile. I'm just gonna toss it. So I like doing this because it makes me feel like I'm not wasting as much, and Benny thoroughly enjoys it. And so this is what we ended up with. We've got 2 beautiful containers of chicken bone broth, and usually they're a lot more filtered, like I said. You know, I can't find my good strainer. I don't know what happened to it. But anyway, this is beautiful stuff. Some people like to put it in the fridge, and then once it's cold, the fat kind of coagulates on the top and you can skim it off. I don't. I love the fat. It's very nutritious, and so I keep the fat, I eat the fat, I put it in my recipes. I don't worry about it. I don't skim it. The only time that you would have to skim it is if you were going to pressure can this broth. You absolutely can pressure can this broth. In fact, the first couple of times that I did this, boiling a chicken every Sunday and making broth out of it, I canned it. I have some still canned up on my pantry shelves. It was just a lot of work, and I found that by the time it was this time at night, I did not want to fool with my pressure canner. I just want to go to bed. I don't want to deal with it. So I found that putting it in the fridge and having it for the week was the perfect solution. Now, I want to give you my big tip here, and there are numerous ways that you can use this, but my big tip is that if you are going to cook rice, cook it in chicken broth instead of water, because the rice absorbs all the liquid when you cook rice, and using bone broth instead of water makes it so much more flavorful and so much more nutritious. And so that's my big surprise, fireworks, drum roll please tip for you, is to use your broth to make rice. And we eat a lot of rice. We do rice in lunches, we do rice in dinner, and so I find myself cooking a lot of rice, and using broth is just the best thing you could possibly do. It's so good. And so the other day when we did the cabbage unstuffed peppers together, I had rice in that recipe. It was more of a skillet recipe, but I needed to add a liquid to that to soften the rice. And so I used chicken broth, and that was kind of a Mexican-y dish. That's not a dish that you would think to add chicken broth to, but chicken broth actually has a pretty neutral flavor. It adds flavor, but nobody's ever gonna taste a dish and be like, is there chicken broth in this? It doesn't stand out like that. It's a pretty neutral flavor enhancer. And so I add it to pasta dishes, I add it to rice dishes, I add it to casseroles, I add it to, you can add chicken broth to so many things. Basically anything that you're gonna put water in when you're making a meal, you can substitute broth, and it's going to be delicious and just that much more nutritious. So now I'm going into my week with 2 big Tupperware containers full of really dense, nutritious broth, and a container full of shredded chicken. And so I've made my life so much easier just by doing this one passive thing, which was the bone broth. And you guys saw how little hands-on time that actually took. We started it in the morning, and now it is nighttime, and here is our result. And it took, I mean, what would you guys say, like 20 minutes of actual hands-on time. Very, very little. And so I recommend that you guys give it a try. See if you can work it into your routine. I have found that it has been just so convenient for me starting my week off already equipped with 2 ingredients to make scratch meals, and it's so healthy. It's your broth is like the nectar of the gods. Like, if you guys have ever heard anything from Sally Fallon, or if you've ever read the Nourishing Traditions book, you'd know that like broth is top notch. They want you to eat it and consume it as much and as many ways as possible. And so it's been really fun adding that into my diet, and I hope that you will too. If you have any questions, or if you have any other ideas on how you could use broth day to day to make this even more valuable to the people watching, please leave that down into the comments, and I'd love to hear about it too. And I can't wait to see you guys in my next video. Have faith and keep moving forward. Bye.